Hello everyone. A warm welcome to our next IOM online edition, IOM on site. It's a great pleasure to welcome today Mrs. Sanja Bojanić, Dr. Sanja Bojanić, who is professor at the University of Rijeka and executive director of the Center for Advanced Studies in Southeast Europe. Hello and welcome.
Good afternoon. It's my pleasure, Sylvia, sharing this moment with you, and I do believe that you're doing fine and healthy.
Many thanks, Sanja. So today we are talking on the situation of Croatia, which has faced heavy earthquakes, first of all in Zagreb, later in Zadar, and all this in the time of the corona crisis, of the pandemic, corona pandemic in whole Europe and in Croatia. And Andrej Plenković, the Prime Minister of Croatia, even talked about two crises the country has to face. And I would like to ask you, Sanja, what is the situation at the moment in Croatia?
Well, at the moment, we do have a web page, coronavirus.hr, and as I can see it now, it's 1,126 cases indicated in Croatia, 119 people already recovered, and unfortunately 12 people are dead from the virus. When the Prime Minister Plenković spoke about two crises, it was at the very beginning of what all started happening, and the earthquake actually didn't disturb in much of circumstances the overall situation. It was only one person who died as a consequence of the earthquake, and what had happened was just the construction work that we needed to deal with. So generally, the Prime Minister and his team, especially the Minister of Health and Public Health, is doing their job very well. So the situation is under control.
And all this happens during the EU presidency of Croatia, and you were, from a professional point of view, you were also involved in this EU presidency. To what extent both crises did influence your work personally?
Actually, we at the University of Rijeka have been honored to organize, together with our Minister of Culture and the government of Croatia, we had that Horizon 2020 grant to organize a conference, a huge conference on culture heritage. The title of the conference was "The Role of Culture Heritage in Socioeconomic Development and Preservation of Democratic Values." 2 days before the conference has been planned, on 13th of March, we needed to cancel it. So all this work that we invested in organizing and logistics went in vain. And we do believe that at some point, when all this stops, we will have the opportunity to organize it in maybe late autumn. Before even going further, I'd like to say a few words in general about what happened to us in the world. And it reminded me a lot on Hannah Arendt and what Hannah Arendt gave us as a definition of crisis. So she said at a certain point that actually what any crisis represents is that it's an event that is separating us from the world. And one of the important consequences of the crisis which is in front of us and that we are living is that this crisis is also depriving us from our experience, and particularly social experience. So the thing of isolation or confinement directly influences our social experience.
And what do you expect for the time? Because when you talk about the crisis and then there's a new experience and also as a new form of lessons learned, what do you expect for the time after the Corona crisis, so the post-Corona time, according to Hannah Arendt?
It is very difficult to make any prognostics. What I noticed at the moment is a strong presence of nation states and quite invisibility of Europe or European Commission stances. We are not following any directives made from the Brussels or Luxembourg or Strasbourg. We are living through very strange and difficult periods of time within our nation states and following the rules prescribed by our prime ministers. So European Commission is giving advices, but it's not present in executive power.
May I ask you regarding the call of Ursula von der Leyen, which is actual at the moment, the so-called Marshall Plan for Europe. What do you think about this initiative? Because there is great discussion on the levels of nation states and European Union. What do you think about this initiative? Might it help and also foster European integration?
Well, we know that Marshall Plan worked after this. We also know that the history never repeats itself. So it's not only important to figure out through our former experience how to deal with the situation, but also give a hint and somehow prospect the new development of things. And it's not Europe as such that is in question. We do have United States, we do have China that are dealing in their ways with the crisis. And what happened to Europe? Well, it has been struck very strongly, firstly in Italy, then in Spain, then now it comes more and more in Sweden. So it's not obvious. And I'm not certain that only by declaring our unity we can succeed in getting it. So more into practice and more into organizational manner, we need to deal with the current moment.
The slogan of Croatia's EU presidency at the moment is a strong Europe in a world of challenges. And when this slogan came out, it was end of December last year, and no one could imagine in which challenges we will find ourselves at the moment. And it seems that Croatia's EU presidency is coming in the background, and also the summit, which is planned for May, from 5th to 7th May, now in Zagreb. It seems it will not happen, but it's not publicly discussed. And during this summit, the Western Balkan enlargement would be also a strong focus, and Albania and North Macedonia received the okay of starting the EU negotiations. And what do you think is to expect within this planned EU enlargement at the moment?
Well, many things are happening now under the radar. And one of the things that is happening under the radar is that sort of invisibility of Croatian presidency. Because much more important things are happening to all of us. That is to say, the migration crisis that we have been gone through from 2015 up to now is still a very, very important issue. And it's also the World Organization of Migration that is dealing with this in Croatia as well. So what is important is that migrants are stuck in Bosnia, in Velika Kladuša, and some of them, they do succeed reaching Slovenia and the Schengen border due to a specific gain that is also at stake between Bosnia and Slovenia.
May I ask you to what extent this specific game in between these bilateral relationships?
Well, the game is actually the real game that is somehow spontaneously organized, and migrants that are stuck in Bosnia, they are involved in this game in a sense that they are counting their passages, how many times they passage the Croatian border, and if they are returned back to Bosnia. So it may happen 10, 15 times that they are stopped by the police and returned back to Bosnia. They then prepare themselves, find another way, or try to to cross the border in some different area to reaching Slovenia. So we're not talking in huge numbers, but it's enough to have 100 people trying to reach Slovenia and succeeding reaching Slovenia to spot the difference.
And to what extent do you think is Croatia trustful? Because it has its slogan within the current EU presidency. It also supports the EU enlargement process, but at the same time, it is really criticized for its pushback actions you described now.
This is what I said. It's under the radar, all this situation with migrants. And on the other side, officially, Croatia is proactive in all processes of negotiation and supports, of course, Northern Macedonia and Albania in this organizational and logistical manner of preparing their openness to negotiation.
Also, this so-called refugee migrant crisis or refugee policy crisis also negatively influenced the bilateral relations former Yugoslav states. And I would like to ask Serbia from Croatia and to Bosnia, as you have mentioned, is it there is a great contradiction, I would say. On the one hand, this good relationship. On the other hand, when problems appear, the summertime suddenly ends, to talk metaphorically.
Mm-hmm. Well, the illegal migration exists all the time. It's just in nowadays, with the beginning of pandemics, it's just slowed a little bit, and it's not present in media. We still have smugglers. We still have a chain of transportation of people that are migrating, and it will never stop, which is like a process that is going on all the time. And on the other side, you have these bilateral state officials proving that they're firm in their policies of not accepting migrants. So what is at stake at the moment, even for the population in general, is this practice of controlling our personal data and even dealing with questions of human rights. Is it enough to guarantee the safety of personal data and on the same time surveil us in terms of making us secure from pandemics? So that's again another issue important that we are dealing during this crisis.
My last question, Sanja, the interrelation of corona pandemic, crisis management, and democracy. You just mentioned human rights and civic rights, and where is to find democracy and also this volonté générale.
This is something that I might describe in the relationship of the two terms. One is isolation and the other is confinement. It's isolation that we are personally way of not participating in social life, and on the other side, confinement is that we are forced not to get involved in social life. So yes, maybe it's important thing to go on with our own responsibility, personal responsibility, and isolate ourselves, because this is, and it has been proved as the optimal way of preserving ourselves from the pandemics. And on the other side, you have state, you have executive power imposing the confinement, looking for some approval that you need to go through. Now in Croatia, we do have permits that we can, electronic permits that we can obtain in order to move from one city to another, in order to, for me, for example, to move from the place where I live to the University of Rijeka where I work. So it starts functioning, but at the same time, this technological means that can provide us some security, and on the other hand, they can give us some hints that actually we need to work hard on preserving our privacy and our personal, all kind of abuse.
So little sub-question, do you maybe, Sanja, see the risk that the current crisis measures have formed a new normality to which we all are used? And according or against this background of this new normality, that we maybe get used to be reduced in our personal liberty and individual liberty, and further on in human rights, and that in the long term, this situation might also be misused by several political elites, because we we seem to get used to a new form of normality.
Well, we have been living the beginning of the 21st century in increased individuality practices and deregulated forms of communication, and then generally in economics, what we call neoliberalism, or in any other sense of political language, pretty much post-liberal situation. So now we are like calming down this importance of private self and individual liberties. It seems that we we are forced to step back again and try to find a common ground in the society to survive as a society this pandemic.
Many thanks, Sanja, for sharing your experience and expertise with us. And we can just say that we are waiting for the time of post-corona. And it was an honor talking to you and also to reflect on the current situation from a philosophical perspective and to take it with us for our further steps in working, because as you experienced it in Rijeka, we also experienced the restrictions, of course, and the situation of Corona in cancelling or postponing all our events. So we can all take the lessons learned from now for our further activities, and looking forward to cooperating with you in the future. And many thanks, Sanja, and to all our listeners and people watching us. Many thanks for following IDMonSite, and just stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure. Thank you. Goodbye.